This is people's livelihoods, it's their careers, and in some instances it might be their health.
That outcome, there was for me only one winner, and that was Cash. 99.9% of people would agree with me on that.
I thought Jack won by a couple of rounds.
I heard the bloody interview, by the way. Okay, Robert, another thorny subject, another controversial one, not a bashing session, but an accountability and understanding session around a particularly controversial fight that happened in the middle of last year. Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall, a lot of recriminations from that fight, a lot of consequences with judges and fallouts and observations from you. You've come in from a lot of criticism. What's your overall view, the circumstances surrounding all the controversy in that fight? And Spencer will be more specific with particular judges' names and so on and so forth.
No problem. Disappointed. It wasn't the fight that I anticipated. It was more of a scrappy fight than I thought it would be. I thought Jack won by a couple of rounds, of which I've come out and said. I remember after the contest speaking to Johnny Nelson, and he said it was 8 rounds. Well, Jesus, I don't understand that. That was it. I think you said 3 or 4.
No, I went a bit higher than that as well. Yeah, I had him about 7 rounds or so. I think.
I just that I don't understand. I mean, Josh, it was, well, as we know, you're going to criticise me anyway. It's subjective how you look at it. These officials are there, experienced officials looking at contests all the time, not talking to somebody else, not on television, etc.
Yeah.
I do think that people, and if you're in the venue, it's different. I do think people are influenced by commentators, etc.
Yeah.
I do think everybody thought Josh was going to walk right through him, and Jack boxed out of his skin,
including Josh, by the way. Yeah.
And including Josh, and Josh had a bad night.
Yeah, sure.
That doesn't take away from the fact that I personally, where I was sitting, thought Jack nicked it by a round. Well, I say 2 rounds, but if it's 2 rounds, you know as well I could be 1 round away. But I do think Josh did all the forcing.
Yeah.
Jack did the cleaner punches, but then held. But it was a good fight, and I'm looking forward to the next fight. Yeah, it's going to cause a lot of controversy.
I thought Jack was sort of dominating the fight, really, because the rounds that were even close, Robert, Jack, for me, was winning those rounds, because although I think he got floored, didn't he? Was it the 8th round he got floored? Josh Taylor got floored in the 8th round, and then from there he was trying to force it, he was trying to push it, and I get that he was coming forward, but coming forward doesn't win you the rounds. The slick boxing and Jack Catterall was winning the rounds. Then Jack Catterall had a point deducted in the 10th round, and you thought, well, maybe that might help him, and then Taylor had a point deducted in the 11th round, and you thought, well, that is definitely it. He needs a knockout. And I look at it and I go, so I just want to go into the scorecards on this one, really, because I was looking at it and I'm going, even if you say there was that outcome, there was for me only one winner, and that was Catterall. And I think that 99.9% of people would agree with me on that. Whether you thought it was 1 round, 2 rounds, 4 rounds, 7 rounds, there was only one winner. But we look at the scorecards, and Howard Foster was the one person that went for Jack Catterall. Victor Loughlin went 1 round for Taylor, and you go, well, okay. And then the final one was Ian John Lewis, and he had it 114, 111 in favour of Josh Taylor. Now that is insane. I mean, did he get called in front of the border? Did he have to explain anything for that? Because
we had explanations from all the judges. Just go back one thing. Jack, when it is point deducted, had lost the round anyway.
Yeah.
So it was a 10-9, become a 10-8.
Yeah.
Right? Taylor won the round he had a point deducted on. So ultimately it's 9-9. That's quite a big swing in regard to, not a huge swing, but a big swing, of which people don't understand. All right? Mm-hmm. With regard to the judges, we had explanation from all of them. We understood Howard. We understood Victor. You know.
I can understand 112, 113 either way.
We understand Ian.
Yeah.
And as you know, Ian was downgraded. Right, very similar to a Premiership referee going down to Championship. Exactly the same. Now Ian has decided to go another route with regard to different issues, which I can't really talk about. But the board did act.
So they did. He got downgraded because that's.
But that was publicised.
Yeah, well, okay. I don't think it was publicised enough, maybe.
But it went out on the press statement, etc. Okay. So that's as simple as that. But you know, unfortunately, we weren't very happy with his explanation and other issues, etc. But I do think personally, I thought it was a closer fight than everybody else called. And I've watched, and when you know the result and you go and watch it on television, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, it's different.
What was his explanation, by the way?
He just felt that Josh was pushing the fight.
Right.
And the others felt the same. Obviously, Howard, where he was sitting, thought that Jack did the better work. Victor thought Josh was pushing the fight, but it was closer than other things. The point deduction made a difference. But I think I watched the fight on television 5 or 6 times afterwards. On 2 occasions, I gave it a draw.
Right, okay.
But with the sound off.
In these situations, Rob, because we have seen them now more frequently than ever, really, where you're seeing results when you go, and they're life-changing for some people. They get the opportunity, they've been waiting a long time, and the result doesn't go their way, and you go, they've clearly won that fight. I mean, is there a way we can make this better than with the 3 judges scoring? Is there a system that you could change, having a VAR system or something going on where you can...
VAR wouldn't help that.
So, but it would help. It would help certain situations. Like what I'm saying is to say if a fighter gets a point deducted and you go for what? Because we get all that with refereeing, where you get there's a knockdown and so it's going to become a 10-8 round, but really he slipped or whatever. And these situations happen, and in fights that affects the scoring.
Yeah, but we're taking everything away. We're making it dehumanised to a certain extent, and whether wrongly or rightly. A referee is the best person, and I believe the judge is the best person to make a judgment on a contest, because they're there looking at. You can get a different view on a fight from the different side you're sitting. Mm-hmm. So what do? Do you have 5 judges? Do you have 7 judges? Do you have 9 judges? You've got people in the truck, whatever. I mean, these are things that we've talked about many, many times.
Yeah.
But we feel at the present time the best system is what we've got. Now, people would disagree with that for sure. And I've got no problem with that. I mean, I was watching. I was talking about VAR, whatever. And as I say, that wouldn't have helped on that case. Mm-hmm. But I watched a football match the other day, and Marcus Rashford, as far as I'm concerned, interfered with the defenders and the goalkeeper. Sure. But VAR said he wasn't offside or whatever. So you've got to stick to the rules. You've got to stick to the interpretation of how things are.
So let's look at the judging. Sorry, do you want to go? Yeah, because I just want to go with this one, with the judging. So I want to stay on this one.
Okay.
So let's look at the judging. Or the judges. How do people become judges, and what sort of qualifications have they got to have to become judges? Because a lot of people won't know that, and a lot of people are saying, well, who are judging these fights? Because it seems to be the same judges that go, well, that's a little bit controversial here there.
You know as well as I do. You know as well as I do. The system in Great Britain is we don't just have a judges category. You've got to be a referee to be a judge, because we feel it's beneficial being inside the ring and also understanding the judging position. So we have a trainee referee. You move from a trainee referee to a B-class referee. From B-class referee, if you're good enough, you become an A-class referee. And if you're good enough as an A-class referee, you become a star-class referee.
But how do you become a referee? So anyone can do it, is what I'm saying.
No, anybody can apply.
But you don't have to have any sort of background.
Some of the best referees, I would say.
No, I'm just asking the question because a lot of people won't know.
Never box. So anybody applies, they're interviewed, etc. We see their understanding of the sport. The next thing is they move on to the next category for a referees committee asking questions. We've just done a Southern Area referees application process where we had 40 odd people applying for a referee's license, which was whittled down to 11, 12 actually. One person pulled out, so it whittled down to 11. We had a session at a boxing gym recently where they answered questions with regard, and this is the first process.
That's the process.
This is the first process.
That's what I'm asking.
This is the first process, right?
Yeah.
So they asked us questions about the rules. They looked at a fight, gave an opinion on the scoring. Then they did working in the ring. So we looked to see how they move, etc. At that point, it's very early on. Then they move on to scoring. So they don't get in the ring, but they sit there at ringside scoring. We look how they compare with the referee, etc. If they're good enough, they move on to practical. Practical is to go in the ring, right, without scoring about. That's done by another referee at ringside. And then if they're good enough, they move on to B class. It could take you 10, 15 years.
I was going to say, it's a long process. That is a long process.
But I might deduce from this that you are happy with the standard of officiating. Am I to deduce that is your position? Because there was a huge amount of noise about the reaction that you gave to the fight. You came in for a lot of criticism. There was a huge amount of noise from those that watched the fight at the time, including all the broadcasters, and the public opinion went in behind it. There were comments from Tyson Fury about that he did not want any of these officials officiating his fight against Dillian Whyte. So with all that background noise, do you honestly feel, and there's no loaded to this question, I'm asking you, do you think that we're operating at the highest level of officiating that we can operate at?
I think compared to the rest of the world, we are.
Well, does that mean that the rest of the world's got a low bar?
No, not at all. I mean, everything is subjective, Simon. You know as well as I do. you're going to disagree with something that I agree with. You know, or I might disagree
with everything.
Well, no. It's been very fair today. To be fair. And I've always listened to him on his football. I've always think he's very interesting.
I heard your comments the other day about you like me sticking to football because my knowledge of boxing might not be quite as good as my knowledge of it. And then you debated whether actually does he even know anything about football. No, I heard the bloody interview, by the way.
No, what I said, Simon, to be totally honest with you, when I listen to football, I think that's right. Then I listen to boxing. Well, he ain't right there. So is he right?
I heard what you said. I've had that before when I first walked into the door of football. Everyone questioning what I thought because ultimately it was easy one to do because people don't like have things put on their toes. But going to the sentiment of subjectivity, how much do you believe subjectivity? This is people's livelihoods, it's their careers, and in some instances it might be their health, right? And you and I have different views on the Bradley Skeet situation,
yes, we do.
Right? And I felt that your handling of it and your ranting around a referee was really fundamentally wrong for the fighter specifically. But are we at a point where subjectivity trumps simple facts of objectivity of an outcome that's based upon a fair outcome rather than someone's particular mood or sentiment or background noise? Is there no evolution? I'm not suggesting VAR is a solution, by the way. I'm suggesting about making an outcome that doesn't have these raging controversies. You'll probably say, well, they ain't that bleeding often. But they're often enough now for people to start saying, this is a rigged game. This is a deck that doesn't stack up properly.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I think I'd rather have Howard Foster, Victor Loughlin judging a fight than yourself.
Fair enough.
And that's how it works.
Right.
And even
what's that got to do with the price to choose?
No, it's got to do with a lot of it.
Well, tell me why then.
You have an opinion and they have an opinion.
Yeah.
They've got a better opinion than you because they're more experienced doing it, which I fully understand.
Yeah.
You have a vocal point. You can criticise something, which is absolutely fine.
But we're talking about boxing. Not just people that you can diminish by saying you just come along recently. We're talking about professional.
I didn't say that.
That's fine. I'll take. Don't worry about it.
You're a boxing fan.
Don't rise to the comment. Let's focus on the detail.
No, let's just get facts.
Right.
I'm not rising to the comment. I'm just saying you are a boxing fan. You have an opinion. You're entitled to that.
And that's fine.
It doesn't mean that you're right.
And we do this, right, regularly to people that aren't football people. I do that to regularly people say, you're a football fan. I was a football club owner. I can diminish what you're saying every day of the week because I've done it. So don't go down that route. Right? But I'm talking about the argument, like people like Tyson Fury that are sitting there going, these are fighters. They know, and you fought, so you know what they're talking about as well. They know more than anyone, I suspect. They're saying it's not good enough. What say you to that sort of observation?
I'm not sure. Nothing.
Johnny Nelson said the same thing.
Nothing against Tyson or Johnny Nelson. And I obviously have to take their opinion. Matthew Macklin. And obviously we have to understand their opinions, right? Absolutely. But I still believe the best place to judge a fight is sitting at ringside.
So you are suggesting and saying for the clarity of everyone listening, it ain't broke. We ain't fixing it. It's the best. It's the best it's going to be. Our standards are higher than everybody else's, and there's nothing we can do to evolve it.
No. There's always things to do to evolve it.
Such as what?
I mean, like seminars, etc. We got a seminar in September. We're going to talk about concussion. We're going to talk about scoring, etc. All these things happen. Maybe we don't stand on a mountain and shout about it, but we obviously go through fights. We've gone through what's happened in the year before. I will actually, because obviously maybe I'm fairly outspoken to our people, etc. This is what I've been through. This is what we're going through. This needs to be sorted, and we will sit down as a group of people and talk about it.
So there is things that are being done to make change.
We have seminars on a regular basis.
Rematch for these two.
Looking forward to it.
Anticipating it.
I am.
On the back burner right now.
I think
Josh is injured.
Yeah, he's injured. Yeah, he's injured. But I think that's a fight now that. The longer that doesn't happen, the longer it's...
The less likely it is to happen. He can't legislate, but that's promoters and fighters, isn't it?
But I do think that Josh will want to do it.
Well, I think he should want to do it.
Depends around him advising him, but I think Josh wants to do it.
Yeah, and I think that the promoters want to do it. Yeah. And ultimately, certainly, Jack Catterall wants to do it. I mean, the poor kid's missed out on an opportunity. He's never going to get back again. But that's a different discussion. Spencer, you've got a particular point that you want to bring up, which is the situation around... You had a conversation with Robert about... The 10 seconds early that a fight was stopped with Daniel Dubois. Walk us through that one.
Yeah, so the situation, we spoke about this, Robert, didn't we? And I rang you up that following night because we was going to talk about it on the show. So he it was 10 seconds early. That bell went 10 seconds early. 9 seconds.
I counted 9.
No, I counted, right, 9 seconds. It went 9 seconds early. We counted it from when the bell rang to when the bell stopped. So we done it on the timer as well. It was 9 seconds early. Had that 9 seconds still been on that round, that fight quite possibly would have been over because he was in serious trouble, Dubois. Been down a couple of times. And so the question I wanted to ask was, was there anything done about that? Did you guys look into it, the British Boxing Board of Control, and what was the outcome?
No. I remember the telephone conversation I'd had with you. I wasn't at the show, didn't see it.
Yeah.
I tried to explain that ultimately the official time is the timekeepers. Forget TV, etc.
That's where I was getting
confused.
No.
Yeah. I hold my hands up. I explained it wrongly.
Yeah.
Right. Ultimately, with the explanation from the timekeeper, he got it wrong. He rung the bell when we should do the 10-second.
10-second clacker.
He rung the bell, and he has admitted that. Yeah. He's explained that. We had I wouldn't say it was a complaint from Rodney Berman because I know Rodney very well. He's a really good guy, etc.
Rodney Berman was a promoter.
He's the managing promoter of Kevin.
Yeah.
And he said, "Could you give us an explanation?" And I went back to him and said, "It was a genuine mistake. We apologise, etc." Now that doesn't get away from the fact that could have happened, or did happen.
Yeah.
But that's the situation.
Right.
The timekeeper made a genuine mistake.
And did Rodney Berman and Kevin Lara, they accepted?
They accepted. Kevin, as far as I know now, Kevin is now put forward to fight for a Bridgerweight WBC championship or whatever, eliminate.
But in those situations, should there then be some sort of hearing or something to say that could go down as a no contest because of the situation that had happened, because of the situation where the outcome was obviously that Daniel Dubois won that fight and he won by KO, but he quite possibly could have lost that fight had that 10 seconds still been there.
I agree. However, we did go to the WBC and say, this is the situation. We've got an explanation. It was a genuine mistake. If you want to make a rematch, there's no objection here. So we give them the option. Okay. However, they've gone another route.
Right, Robert, we want to move on to something slightly different and very controversial as well, and that's Misfits Boxing.
Yeah.
So Misfits Boxing, effectively, which is YouTube boxing, and we've seen some of it. There's a couple of questions I want to ask you. We've seen some of it. Some of the standards not too bad, white-collar boxing maybe, and some of it is diabolical, let's be honest, terrible. I mean, like, clearly not watched a boxing fight, not trained at all, and it's coming under the banner of boxing. And the first question I want to ask you is the British Boxing Board of Control in any way affiliated to this? Like, does it sanction it? No,
got nothing to do with it. However, it is a growing thing.
Yeah.
So therefore you can't ignore it. And I have suggested we have conversations with people to see how we can go. But what concerns me is, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it's you're going to get picked up on words. It's not proper boxing, but it is boxing.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong, then I'm going to get a phone call, and something will.
Where does it fall? What does it fall under? Who's
they do their own thing.
They do their own thing. So
but
Kalle Sauerland, who's behind this with KSI, etc. Kalle Sauerland, who is a promoter that's
not licensed with us.
Is not licensed to the British Boxing Board of Control.
His brother is, but he isn't.
Okay.
Doesn't mean he's nothing to do with it.
Right.
But I've had conversations with Kalle about what we can do to
but effectively, it is the Sauerlands that
we need to speak to. As I say, I've had conversations. I forget where it was. Wembley recently. No. Where was a Eubank fight? Eubank and Smith fight. I had conversations about meeting up and talking about it because I am concerned about it.
Yeah, of course.
It's all a bit of fun to be a boxer. Because as I said earlier, it's something people want to do. But this boxing's a very, very tough sport, and I know the medical provisions we've got in place are very, very strict, and I'm not sure what they do. The other thing is, I've looked at some of the things on YouTube, etc., and I personally think they should get themselves affiliated with the amateurs. If they're making so much money, the amateurs could do with the money they're making, etc., or a proportion of that to help the clubs and whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure a lot of those people would get an amateur card.
No, I totally agree with you.
Certainly wouldn't get a professional card.
But do you know what was the fascinating thing for me? The last KSI show that we'd done at Wembley Arena, we covered it actually on talkSPORT, and the appetite for it was absolutely insane. We was there at 7 o'clock at night. You go to a professional boxing show, 7 o'clock at night, you've probably got 30 people in a 50,000 stadium or whatever. the appetite, every seat was packed out. There was a real carnival atmosphere. They've captured that sort of side of it really, really well. You know, they've done that well. They've marketed it well. It's a little bit of showbiz. It's like boxing / WWE type of thing. But we've got to look at the standard of boxing, because some of the fighters on there are really good or are at a good standard, and some of them on there are terrible. And we're seeing like bad knockouts on there as well. So you go like, we need to get the balance right. You know, if that's going to, because it's not going to go away, by the way, is it?
Well, I think it depends.
It's going to be around for a while.
It may not last forever, but it's certainly here.
They've done a 5-year deal with DAZN and over 30 shows or something.
It needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
you know?
that's
something
saying,
that I want to do.
Are you're looking at getting involved with that somehow?
No, I'm looking to talk.
Right.
Let's see. I'm not saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that.
Right.
You know, I'm looking to talk.
But you will have that conversation.
We'll have that conversation at some point when everybody's ready to do it. The thing that does concern, as I said, boxing. You know, as I say, I don't think it's proper boxing as such. But if something goes wrong, it's boxing, and that doesn't give the sport any good.
Sure.
I mean, the one thing that does kind of doesn't surprise me, but disappoints me with our sport compared to that, is that in professional boxing that we run now, somebody will come and buy a ticket to watch one fight.
Yeah.
Now, when I was boxing and you were boxing,
Yeah.
you came in at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, you watched the whole show.
Sure.
Right? Now they don't do that anymore, which is very disappointing. And I really would love to see people buy a ticket and stay the whole show, because
it's like only the main event is where you get the crowd.
Or who they bought a ticket to go and see.
Yeah, sure.
But in that thing, I think that it's a bit like the show. There's a different dynamics of there. Who went to the show? It's a bit like the all-female show.
Mm.
To me,
it's a different demographic, though, isn't it?
It was all packed out, but it was a family event where most of the boxing people go to. Our boxing is maybe late 20s, 30s, or whatever. Yeah. You go to the KSI, and I wasn't there. You look around at the young people.
Yeah, well, they're there with their parents. It is a different demographic.
My son's telling me about KSI, sending me things about KSI, and they're the people we need to go to boxing.
So you think there's a market there, is what I'm saying?
I don't. Well, there's a market for everything. Isn't it? Depends how it's
Well, we
controlled.
saw it. I mean, much to my chagrin, at the Anthony Yard Better Beer fight, with Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. I went to the door, and it came out, and I saw the whole. I wish I'd stayed in there, because I came back and saw the whole arena up in arms and really engaging with what was going on between.
That's when it actually caught a light, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got some skin in the game. He seems to be so focused on YouTube.
Not, mate. All right, I started it off, but I'm guilty of that. But I've got no. Yeah, I'm not associated with it at all anymore.
But the thing with with regard to Paul and Tommy, they're both licensed.
Yeah.
Right? It's a good 6-round, 8 fight. 8-round fight. It's not top of the bill. It's a good 6-round or a 10-round, 8-round fight.
I'll probably take a lot of stick for this, but I think it's an intriguing fight.
Well, I'm not saying it's not. You can have an intriguing fight.
I know, but I don't know anybody that doesn't want to see it, is what I'm saying. You'll get all your hardcore boxing fans going, this is this is rubbish, this is not boxing, but it's a fascinating fight.
It may be a fascinating fight, but they're good enough to have a license.
Yeah.
So it could be in a show in Glasgow, and a little dinner hall show, whatever.
So it's a different conversation, really.
Different conversation.
Yeah. In this subject of a variety of different things that are coming into the boxing world, whether it's misfits or the YouTube world starting to impinge, and people believe, not impinge, but impact, and people believe that's going to be the next eyes on the prize. I don't know if that's the case or not. The WBC are planning to introduce a transgender category this year. Of course, this is a very thorny subject across the board, but if it's a transgender category, then I'm assuming it's not an issue of people suggesting that people competing across sexes creates a problem. You sanction these fights in the UK?
Not at the present time, no. We are going through, our policy at the present time is what you're born as. You can box who you're born as. But
if it's a transgender athlete against a transgender athlete,
yeah, no, but it depends. Well, we're reviewing our transgender policy like every other sport is doing now, right? And we're in a good position to do something about that shortly. I think the thing is, if you're born a man and changed to a woman, and you want to box a woman, that is just
absolutely.
That's absolutely not right.
So are you going to double down that? Because people like Fina have led the way in the women's swimming in America, and there's been this nonsense going on across sport about the idea that a born male can then fight against or compete or swim or play against a female, I think is fundamentally flawed. And you can have people like India Willoughby arguing till the cows come home. There is a fundamental difference in composition.
That could be disastrous.
In boxing more so than anything.
In combat sport, definitely.
We're certainly different.
Yeah.
Because we're a dangerous sport, etc.
Yeah.
So no, that won't happen.
So you intend to hold that line. You're not going to go down the route of being browbeaten into suggesting that a particular lobby and a particular outlook and the idea that you as a sport are going to be branded with transphobia and all that, what I believe to be nonsense. You're going to hold the line and say absolutely categorically not.
Every doctor I've spoken to is absolutely against it, and so am I.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Okay, Robert, we'll move on from a subject that interested me very little onto a subject, by that I mean Misfits and Spencer's interested in making some money out of KSI and people like that.
Spencer seems to be working everywhere else.
And move into an area that I think is fascinating alongside the other subject matters, which is the medicals and the aftercare of boxing and the challenging that boxing has. We touched upon it at the beginning of this broadcast about the challenges that boxing has around CTE and other sports getting put in the crosshairs of real change and concussion protocols, and boxing doesn't seem to be part of the conversation, and inevitably it's going to be.
Yes.
And of course we saw recently the situation with Kell Brook and his behaviour, albeit no one can do anything about that because he's a big boy, can control his own destiny. But the argument is about what does boxing do to provide enough support? What are the medicals in this country like for boxers and the licensing regulations that go with it? The cost implications of it? What more can boxing do to better itself, to make sure that the full wraparound cradle-to-grave mentality for fighters exists in all its permutations?
Couple of things there. I think that we obviously, first thing I'd say, I think we're slightly different. I mean, obviously I've been reading about football and rugby with great interest, etc., because I am aware of what's coming our way. And we've actually had a lot of conversations with people and certainly journalists contacting us with regard to what we do. The other thing is, we've, as a sport, we've been dealing with concussion protocols and dementia, etc., for a long time. So we have a lot of things
dealing with in what way? Acknowledging its existence, preparing for it?
I'll come to it.
Okay, go on.
I think there's a couple of things slightly different with boxing and other contact sports, or football or rugby, is the purpose of football and rugby is not to go out and injure somebody. It's a consequence of that. Boxing's purpose is actually to hurt somebody.
Yep.
So therefore, you've got two adults, because we don't license anybody under 18, who are consenting to that in the first place. Now, you can get challenged on that. You can get challenged on anything. You know that as well.
Yeah, hear the point you're making, Right. The characterisation of it,
The first point is that. Secondly, every boxer we have, when they first turn pro, has to have an MRI and MRA brain scan.
Yeah.
After that, unless we believe there's a need to get an MRA, you only have the MRI. So every year, that MRI scan is reviewed to see if there's any change from the previous scan. If there is a structural change, then they have to go and do a neuropsychological assessment. Right? If that's a poor assessment, then we will withdraw a license.
Yep.
Right? If it's a good assessment, we'll carry on. If there's a further change, you'll lose your license. All right? So these things are in place. In addition to that, any boxer who is stopped, or even if they win on points in a particularly hard fight, can be suspended. Mm-hmm. If you suffer from concussion, which obviously is a brain issue, right? You are suspended for all 28 days, 45 days, possibly more. It's up to the doctor at that show. If he feels it's a particularly heavy fight, hard fight, he could be suspended for a year. He could say, before you box again, we need another MRI scan. We need another neuropsychological test. So these things are in place. Also, all our doctors, we have a medical officers meeting in September, and they are dealing with CTE protocols. We've been dealing with CTE protocols in our place since 2017, right? So it's not new to us. I fully understand the concerns we have. There's always things you can look at, but ultimately, and I'm the person who administers the sport. I'm the person who's done it, like him. Sure. Hit on the head doesn't do any good, Simon.
No, of course not.
We have to understand that.
But your characterisation is that this is very different from other sports, because ultimately this is a consent. This is a byproduct of the very nature of the sport. Getting a head injury from heading a ball, heading someone else's head, like other players have done, like Ryan Mason did, is unfortunately a consequence of playing in that sport, not necessarily a driven outcome.
No.
And you think that's going to wear the inevitable focus on boxing that's going to come.
I think it's a start.
Yeah.
I think it's a start.
If we look at British Boxing Board of Control and their medical procedures, they're the most stringent boxing board in the world. I know this anyway, and I know that medical science has moved on a lot. Boxing Board of Control have made that happen. If you go back to 1990, when Michael Watson was injured in the ring against Chris Eubank Jr., the medical procedures weren't around the ring side or whatever. They learned from that, and the next injury was myself in 1997, 7 years later.
He was in hospital in 15 minutes.
Absolutely, and that was the difference. And Michael Watson, through what happened to Michael Watson, effectively saved my life, or any sort of damage to any sort of brain damage or whatever. So what I'm saying is the Boxing Board of Control recognised that they had a problem, and they did deal with that. So in their defence, the medical side of things, they make it as safe as they possibly can.
Think we're best,
and they are moving and evolving all the time.
I think we're very good.
Yeah.
I'd hate to say we're the best in the class.
Small fights to big fights.
Yeah. The same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think globally, though, you're in front of everyone else. If you go, you're talking about out in the States or anywhere like that, the British Boxing Board of Control, their medical procedures, and I know this because we travel the world, are better than anywhere else. Absolutely.
Whether you're a 4-round fighter, right, or a 12-round world championship fighter, your medical procedure is excellent.
But they've got a lot tougher over the years as well, though, Robert, haven't they? So when I was boxing, it was easier to get a license than what it is now.
Yeah. But look at it. Neuropsychological tests has been in place for a couple of years now. It wasn't when you were boxing.
Sure.
That's when I boxed. It was a skull X-ray.
Sure. I mean, I think
we're a completely different beast than we were then.
I think the problem we've got is that boxing, kids that go into boxing come from deprived areas. There's no money. We know that, and it gives kids hope, and it gives a lot of kids a good future if they succeed in what they do. The problem we've got is with all these MRIs that are getting introduced and all the testing that they've got to do is the financial side of things. And which I suppose where I'm trying to get at is with some of these kids, they haven't got any money, so where they can't go through these brain scans, etc., may turn them away from sport and give up even boxing. Is there anything that we could do, or the Boxing Board of Control could do, to make that easier for these kids that are coming through?
I think the trouble you got, Spencer, we do subsidise the scans.
You know what I mean?
We subsidise the scans.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm a big one. Maybe I'm very harsh, but if you want to be a plumber, you've got to buy the tools.
Yeah. I mean, how much is a brain scan, for instance?
400 quid.
400 quid, I was going to say.
Yeah. For 350, 400 quid,
Yeah.
And it's gone up now, actually, because...
But then they've got the eye tests and they've got everything else.
You've got the eye, but
how much would it all come to? Like, say,
I would say, as an annual medical, it's going to cost you 700 quid. Depends where you're in the country.
Yeah.
It really does. In London, it's going to be more expensive. The scan's the same.
But do you think there's anything that we could do to make that easier for some of the young kids that are coming through that financially can't afford to do that?
Spencer, as I just said, if you want to be a plumber, you've got to buy the tools. And that's how it is. And if you get a couple of fights, you might pay it off. And I really do think we subsidise on the brain scans, etc. But big believer in, if you want to do it, that's what you've got to do.
And to be fair, there is an element, obviously the challenge for Spencer is when he had MRI scans, it was ascertained if he actually had a brain in the first place.
Actually, I saw it.
Well, listen, mate,
there was something there.
I'm the only one that's come out better from the operation, and perhaps they left a spanner in or something. I don't know.
You can go back years and how the sport's changed hugely in this country.
Yeah,
hugely.
Well, what they done with me was they sedated me in the ring, which obviously stopped any swelling on the brain. Took me to the hospital, like you say, within half an hour. They called it the golden hour. I was under the knife. They operated. 3-hour operation. Take blood.
I was there that night.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, it was all because I was told by the doctors, look, because you were sedated in the ring, shut down the system and stopped any swelling on the brain. That's why when people ring up the day after an injury, which thank God there's not that many, when they say, well, there's nothing to tell you because they've just shut everything down. Yeah.
They just close everything up, just let you recover properly. Yeah. I remember speaking to you. Jess was in the hospital room with you, and I rung up Jess, and you just woken up. And we were talking to you then.
Yeah.
So you give me a fright, Spencer?
Give yourself a fright, and then I've got to end up working with clowns like this.
Here you go. Imagine how I feel. The last part of this particular subject, Robert, and I promise you that your grilling is done, or our discussion is done, is obviously with the recent situation surrounding Kell Brook. An argument gets thrown out. I know during COVID it got thrown out as well about the inability for the boxing world to sustain itself with people being able to spar, fights being able to be made, and so on and so forth. Small halls potentially going out of business because of the situation surrounding COVID, and hopefully we'll never have another situation like that again. But what do you feel about the opportunities to provide a much more wraparound mentality? I think they're a bunch of idiots, but the PFA are very well funded in football. They take a vast amount of money out of the broadcasting deals. They don't do as much as they could do, but prima facie, they're supposed to be looking after the members of their organisation that pay to be a member, and ultimately they give them advice, they give them care, they provide medical support for them. What can boxing do? Does it do enough, do you think? And you'll say no, because it can always do more.
Well, there can always be more.
Right?
In
real terms.
In real terms, don't forget, there's more ex-boxers than there are present boxers.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a very big pool to look at.
Same with football, with more ex-footballers.
Absolutely. We don't have a union. People have tried to build Barry McGuigan, along with Nicky Piper and Colin McMillan, tried to have a union. The trouble was that no boxers funded it.
No one wants to pay anything into it.
No one wants to pay any money. Yeah. So therefore, it's down to us to a certain extent. When you're no longer a licence holder, wrongly or rightly, the responsibility from us has gone. And we're not really a big enough organisation to look after everybody with regard to that. We try. We get people contact us. We also, although we're the British Boxing Board of Control, we also have a charity, a separate organisation.
Is there no way, maybe I'm off on a piece here, but is there no way as part of licensing a fighter in this country and giving them a British licence that they have to accept a proportion of their revenue that they generate from fights over their career, whether it's a percentile, a small percentile, or a significant percentile, can be paid into a central fund that benefits the fighters themselves in the longer terms? A pension, a medical scheme.
When we license people, we have an insurance policy for permanent injury, etc.
Yeah.
I've spoken to boxers about sorting out pensions. I've dealt with there's a pension company that we deal with. We send out leaflets, etc., to join this organisation or whatever. With regard to the insurance, I've always said to boxers, listen, you're insured for this amount of money for death or permanent injury, but what you need to do, young person, is to top it up with yourself. And the organisation that we deal with have said not one boxer has topped it up.
So the boxing board gives that advice, though, yeah?
Yeah, we give the advice. We send out leaflets every year, etc. But if they're not listening to us, what can we do?
So those shouting from the outside that would say, I don't think it's a case. I think Kell is a big boy. I know he's got challenges, and coming out of anything, when the lights are on you, the lights go down, it can be a debilitating mental approach to life because you're no longer on everyone's tongue. No one's interested in you. The light goes down. So are we saying that really and truly, with the current structure of boxing and the way that it's put together, there isn't much of a solution to square that circle? The Kell Brooks of the world will slip through the gaps when they're having issues post.
The problem you've got there, Simon, is until you hear the news, you don't know.
Yeah.
Now, if some boxer rings me up and says, I've got a problem, we can put them onto somebody who can help them. But so it's a bit like when Ricky had his problems. Knew nothing about it till you read about it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Now, if he'd have rung up a couple of weeks before and said, I'm going, we could have helped him. Kell is exactly the same. Knew nothing about
helped him. How?
Do you reckon
we can put them onto the best experts to deal with that. We haven't got that facility within the board, but we know enough people to be able to put you.
But the finances of it would be theirs to bear.
So it'd be a separate organisation. Really, be the aftercare of fighters could be. So I suppose is something totally different. I understand what Robert's saying is that when boxers finish boxing, the majority of them, 99% of them disappear and you never know where they're going, what they're doing. So,
But what I'm saying is if there was a central relationship that had, the footballers, and again, I hate to compare it to football because there's much more money in football in a collective way, but the footballers know when they pack up, if they want something, they can go to the PFA and say, look, I've got an organisation here. Whether they choose to is a different matter.
Yeah.
What you've got is really they can phone you up and you can pass them off to someone else because that's the nature of the construction. Is there no way of constructing it differently?
Maybe there is, but at the present time, this is what we've got, right?
Yeah. Would you want to construct it differently?
I'd like to construct a lot of things differently, but it takes time. It takes people to accept things. The biggest objection we have when we change anything is from the licence holders themselves.
Yeah. So there's a kind of argument, if you won't help yourselves, how can I help you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's in any walk of life, Simon, to be honest with you.
And
it's a bit like putting up licence fees or whatever, because we need that to cover your insurance, young person.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay it.
Yeah, of course.
It kind of falls, in my view, it kind of falls within the remit of those that have the influence over the fighters, which are people like the promoters and the managers, to be able to look after them properly.
I remember my father used to manage boxers, and money was put aside every time they boxed. Yeah. And then he only give it to them when they retired.
It just feels for me, coming from a background of football, which I didn't much like at times, that there just lacks this framework that the boxing world, I do think, needs, because you're in a very difficult business. You're in the hurt business, as you know more than I do. And I just feel, I can't help but feel that there does need to be a better thought out process to be able to manage the value of a fighter from the very beginning to the very end and beyond his career. And somehow there must be a mechanism that does slightly better than, if you need us, we're here. But other than that, you're gone. And I do feel there does need to be something better than that.
I also think that although the big names get publicised, that they're having difficulties, but they've earned opportunity to earn good money. What they do with that money is up to them. Right?
Yeah.
You know, and many times I said you need to put this away, or people, not just me, but put this away, and they don't. They just think you're.
But why wouldn't you mandate it as part of a condition of holding a licence?
I think when you deal with people's money, etc., that's totally up to them. I fully understand what you're saying, but it's a business deal. They look after their own financial situations. I don't think it's right for a grey-haired man like myself to say, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, or you've got to do this and got to do that.
Well, it's like
advise it.
But it's like the cost implications. You made a case earlier on about if you want to do something, you've got to have the tools. And part of the tools for a fighter is to understand he's got to look after his well-being.
Yeah.
Right? So why wouldn't it be a situation, you're not telling them what to do with their money, you're providing with a support structure, which is a pension, which they get the benefits of, and a licensing condition. People will have fees taken out of them left, right and centre. Promoters will take money out of them left, right and centre. And there is what there is there. So is it because you fear that it would affect your membership, that introducing such a thing as that?
Don't fear anything, Simon, to be honest with you. If you want to put something forward, we put it forward. But we've tried. You know, we've tried with the insurance. I've spoken to boxers about pensions. If we can deal with this, they just don't want to pay. And that's how it is. Now, the next generation may understand it more.
Yeah, but if it's a condition of licensing, like you're saying, you've got to pay 700 quid or you don't get medicals every year.
Well, maybe that's something we need to look at. I don't know. But
Food for thought, anyway. Maybe I'm looking at it from a layman point of view, trying to suggest that the fighters are very valuable and their careers are very difficult. And I actually think fighters, this is going to be a sweeping statement, have far more substance and integrity than a lot of professional footballers.
I'd agree.
And I would like them to be looked after in a far more compelling way than they currently seem to be.
I fully understand that. The thing is, I do think that the boxers who've earned more money maybe have a better. You hear about the big names having difficulty.
Yeah.
But it's the 4 round, the 6 round, etc. More than likely,
kids that don't make it, they're the ones that struggle.
Whatsoever.
They're the ones that struggle, but
they should have a job as well.
Yeah.
You know, when I boxed, I had a job. A lot of people just want to be a full-time boxer. They're only 500, 600 quid.
Robert, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Much appreciated. That's it for episode 13 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Don't forget to keep liking and subscribing because we want to get those 50k. That gets Pat a bonus, the producer, which he so richly deserves. And don't forget to keep leaving the questions in the comment section below for the boxing Q&A that comes up shortly.